breaking news about the 49ers defensive coordinators, brought to you by Kyle Shanahan himself and Matt Maiocco. Really quickly, Corey Soto says, there were quite a lot of people saying there was no way it could be Staley. Well. And then appears he has his foot in the door. Mariah, faithful, 49er Faithful Pod. Everyone go like and subscribe to her channel. She says, yo, have a great show. And then we have a lot of people in here.
Let's go.
Travis and 49er Talk says, yo. We got Stephanie. We got Rick. So I figured we would start it off talking about the breaking news. Did you see Matt Maiocco's tweet?
Yeah.
Sounds like he just spoke to Kyle Shanahan about the defensive coordinator news. I just want you to know, and everyone watching the show to know, that when I was making my thumbnail, I was right here in the kitchen because my friend is doing his work, his real job in the office. And I was asking my other friend, I was like, should I make it about the defensive coordinator? Like, everyone wants to know, but I feel like I've already done some little shows on him, or like little videos on the coordinator positions, and it's kind of a tired topic. And I was like, but knowing me, we're going to get some information right before. And this was at like 2 my time. It's like 6 my time now. So I just want to say that I went with my thumbnail because I thought it was pretty and clever. And I was so excited about my Love is Blind reference that we'll get to later on. But I did make the wrong decision, and I should have made it about the defensive coordinator because we did get breaking news. Do you want to inform people about what that is, Steph?
Yeah, sure. So Matt Maiocco, just a couple hours ago, an hour ago actually, put out an article, and it pretty much says that the 49ers completed interviews with former Chargers head coach Brandon Staley, as well as an internal candidate, Nick Sorensen. Sorensen is the 49ers defensive passing game specialist currently. Both of those names aren't really surprising to us, because we kind of figured those would be at least one of the names that would be floating around. Daniel Bullocks, who is the 49ers defensive backs coach, he is also going to be interviewing later this week. So another name that isn't very surprising, but I'd have to imagine as far as like internal candidates go, it's probably just going to be Sorensen and Bullocks, just based on how much time has gone by. And, it's just been those two internally. And so it seems like, and Matt Maiocco also mentioned in the article, external candidates are going to be interviewed later this week. Yeah. So thank you, Corey. So that brings into question, who might that be? Right. Kyle's not going to be in Indy. That's one thing I did kind of wonder briefly, but he's not going to be there. So he's going to stay in Santa Clara, get those interviews. So I would assume whoever he interviews, either it would be virtual or it would be someone who would fly out, to Santa Clara, to get the face-to-face interview with him.
is an interesting option. I don't know if he's gonna be let go from where he's. I mean,
I think he already was, right? Like, wasn't he with the Dolphins? And I think he was let go.
No, but then wasn't last year he was with?
Oh no, not with the. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of like candidates that people have mentioned, and I think the Brandon Staley one was like the low-hanging fruit just because they have the same agent, Kyle Shanahan and Staley. So
he might have just slipped his way in there, like as a favor,
if anything, that could just be doing him a favor. I don't know, but
gets his name in the hiring cycles. Like, we know a lot of this for for coaches. A lot of it, especially with our agents, is just about getting the like perspective out of there. Like, it's a good look, in my opinion, if the 49ers are interested in you. You know what I mean? Right. Especially for Brandon Staley, whose reputation is kind of in the dumps right now.
Yeah, exactly. So again, just the fact they have the same agent, that could have been set up pretty easily. But I have to imagine, one, just based on how long it's taken, and then two, just the names that we've seen so far, the names so far probably aren't the first choices, if I had to guess. Like, I'm still not buying that an internal candidate, like, if an internal candidate gets hired, I think they'd be settling for an internal candidate, personally. So whoever's next on the list of external candidates, I think would probably be like maybe potentially a bigger fish.
So are you someone who bites into the idea of like a Belichick variable guy, or is that too
I
out there
still like, I know a lot of people are like, you would never do that, but I'm not as I think it can happen like that. I'll just say that. Like, there's a lot of people who are like, there's no way. And another name that people are like, there's no way. Why would they do that? Is Jeff Ulbrich, who is the Jets defensive coordinator. I think anything can happen. Like, the way I view it, anything can happen. I think that's an interesting one, just because there's some buzz around that one, and
it's
Tim K, he was the one that mentioned it first, which I feel like that has more, like, I don't think he would mention that name just out of nowhere. Obviously, there's the connection to Saleh and just that coaching tree. Like, there's connection.
My only issue with the Jeff Ulbrich, and it's interesting, right? Because in my opinion, Tim Kawakami's not putting that name out there if there's not like some sort of internal interest in, but like people don't just like pull names out of a hat. Like, there has to be for some reason that he's getting brought up. My only thing is I'd be wary because for Robert Saleh, they're on like their last thread, right? They need the 49ers they need to do well this season. The Jets need to do well this season for them to keep their jobs. So like, if he's good, wouldn't they want to keep him? And if they're willing to risk losing him in such a make or break year, to me, that means they don't really value him that much, right? I don't know.
That's definitely
there is that hold up, because Matt Maiocco kind of talking about how was it Tim Kawakami again today had a tweet saying that they were going to hire their defensive coordinator within the week, right? But that there was some holdup, and that kind of gives some credence to the Jeff Ulbrich idea. Because what if the Jets are like, okay, we do really value him now, so like, yes, but only if you give us like a second. And what if the 49ers are like, how about a seventh? So it could be like that when they talk about holdups. That makes me think it could be an external guy, because if it was an internal guy, what is just be like, here
there would be no hold up there.
Yeah.
There would be no hold up for an internal guy. Aside from like scheduling, I guess it's somewhat surprising that Bullocks isn't getting his interview until later this week. But yeah, I mean, certainly you do raise the points of the people who think it's impossible for that move to happen, right? I am just in the anything is possible.
Yeah, you're like, I've seen too much. There's no.
Yeah, like, why not? Why not, right? So it's unlikely. I think we can all
acknowledge
why not
me on a rainy day? Why not me? Sorry, that song was stuck in my head yesterday, and I kept. It's like a country song, like, why not me on a rainy day? Why not me? I don't know. Sorry. I'm sure it sounds different than that. To be honest, I was like going on YouTube the other day, and like one of the thumbnails, it was like, why not? Or why me? Or something like that. And then I haven't heard that song, I swear to God, in like 10 years. And then all morning I was just singing only that verse, because I don't know the song either, to my friend. And she was like, what the fuck? And I was like, I don't know, man. It's hard to be in this brain. But really quick, Corey Soto says, if this team truly wants to win now, especially after coming off a Super Bowl loss, then give me a big, proven name. Get the most out of this D while you have it. I agree. I think that is kind of the push for, I think, Steph, even though Mariah might say that she's causing chaos. I think Steph is maybe pushing for a Belichick type because it's kind of like, okay, yeah, Belichick might have to let a little of his ego go. Kyle Shanahan might have to let a little of his ego go. But if they truly see it as like this unbelievable opportunity, wouldn't you do everything to build and create the job of John Lynch, the job of Kyle Shanahan is to construct the best roster, and that includes the coaches possible. So in my opinion, you have to at least be, on the phone with Belichick saying, we're going to give you all the money and we're willing to make concessions. I think that is why in that exit interview process, when asked, does the next DC, because they were kind of asking about Steve Wilks and how he didn't wasn't accustomed to running the Kyle Shanahan scheme. And Kyle made the caveat well, we might be open to changing that. I think that was for a guy like Belichick or Vrabel or a bigger name. You know what I mean? If you're worth it,
it'd have to be worth it.
If you've proven to have success with yours, then we could potentially go to you. If you're a small name guy, you're running our shit. That's kind of how Kyle Shanahan.
Or if they run some kind of hybrid or something like that, then maybe there's wiggle room there as well. But yeah, I mean, I agree. I think for the process they're taking their time, and for it to be taking this long, it has me. For one, I like that they're taking so long. I understand the angst of fans of this should have been done by the combine. Why are they waiting so long? Kind of thing. But it shows me that they care. It shows me that Kyle does not want to make the same mistake he did with Steve Wilks, and he wants to make sure he gets the right candidate. So that involves, getting a bigger pool of candidates and interviewing those guys, both internally and externally. And as we know, external candidates are next up to be interviewed, or more external candidates are next up. So I think, it shows they're not rushing this. I like that. They need to, kind of like you said, show us that, give me the proven name, is what Corey said. That's exactly the wavelength I'm on as well. Give us someone who you can trust, Kyle, and we can trust too, to make us feel better.
Don't rush into a pick. Don't just settle for an internal hire because it's easy. Do the due diligence.
Yeah. You know what I would like too is someone who is way more experienced than Kyle. Okay, maybe not way more, but just someone who has more experience than Kyle and has head coaching experience. Because I think if it's someone that Kyle Shanahan respects and is more decorated than him as far as accomplishments go and how much experience they have, then that can be the perfect marriage of okay, this defensive coordinator can also help Kyle in what he lacks and what he doesn't know, right? Or what he doesn't think he doesn't need to know, kind of, because, just someone who can maybe break down that, ego of Kyle just a bit.
I like the idea that I think that was my openness to the Belichick question, or a guy like him. I'm kind of using him because he seems like the, maybe the ultimate mountaintop, but a guy like Vrabel, someone I like how you said Kyle respects, because to me there has to be some sort of change from last year if you want, right? The definition of an insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. So in my opinion, if you want to bring this defense to the next level, maybe Kyle Shanahan would benefit from feeling not only his defensive coordinator is competent so he can fully invest in the offense, but you're right, so they could learn off of each other. Because we've heard a lot that Kyle Shanahan likes to be really invested in the defense and what they're doing and wants to, help and learn that side of the ball. So potentially not only would a guy like Belichick be able to build his resume and learn more about the Shanahan system, but then Kyle Shanahan's going to learn how to stop Mahomes, because Mike Variable and those guys have done that over and over again. So I do think having a guy of like prestige might be the only way to knock to get Kyle Shanahan open to listening and maybe having a bit of change in his system. And not just his system of like what they play on the field, but his system within the building, how they game plan, how they talk. Like a guy like that is going to have real influence on how things are run. And although that might be scary to Kyle Shanahan, right? Because like change is scary, but sometimes necessary to get you to your ultimate goal. And I think if Jed York or someone could sit Kyle Shanahan down and kind of explain to him that, I think some people I've like kind of heard the argument that Kyle Shanahan might be like too prideful to do that. How do you feel about that statement? Like, I kind of think that although pride is obviously a huge deal for these coaches, I think football is their life. And like within the coaching system, like Kyle Shanahan throughout his career has had to have so many moments where he's pushed his pride aside in order to grow and learn. Like he could have worked under his dad, but he wanted to go work in Cleveland and like build up his own name. Like I could see him putting football and a Super Bowl over his pride, even if it's difficult. Does that make sense? But do you think no?
I mean, like, I don't think that isn't impossible. I just don't think we've seen it yet. Like I mean, I think he's been at the doorstep of Super Bowls, and you know, for whatever reason hasn't gotten one yet. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think a defensive coordinator that Kyle can learn from, instead of, you know, the defensive coordinator learning things from Kyle, would be like the ideal path forward for this team, just based on where they're at.
Yeah, but I don't know. It is interesting, and I see why this search is taking a little longer, because I do think that they anticipated that Steve Wilkes would end up staying another year. Like when they hired him, I don't think that they thought he was going to be like a one and done type guy.
Yeah.
I know that people talked about like, because the 49ers have kind of a history of losing their coaches, mostly because they're getting hired off and becoming better. But because of his recent history with being a head coach, I kind of suspected that even if he had a really good year, that he'd probably want to stick around for like 2 years. And so I don't think even internally, because I've heard a lot of discourse like, shouldn't they have already been ready for this type of thing? I don't think, and maybe throughout the year they had more of an inkling that they might let him go, but I don't think like when they went into the Steve Wilkes hiring that they anticipated him leaving right away. So and a lot of things happen. Like people didn't anticipate Bill Belichick being not only let go from the Patriots, but then not hired as a defensive coach. Same thing like Brandon Staley. I know we've had a ton of comments being like, I'm really against the Brandon Staley idea. I'm not saying that's wrong or right, but to not look into that after his success that he had with the Rams. But obviously you have to interview him and be like, what went wrong? Is this more of a, maybe it's the opposite. Like we're kind of, I'm more with you where I would prefer a Belichick, like someone that can help Kyle, but maybe it's the opposite. Maybe Staley is actually really good as like just in his specific role, but he needs guidance and like help with player management and personnel and roster and all the things that he failed at as a head coach. But maybe if he can because Sean McVay is like, in my opinion, a part of the Kyle Shanahan tree, and that's where Staley flourished. So maybe that is something that could work well for Kyle Shanahan. Like that would be kind of going more in the way of Kyle taking over more. But if it could be, because who did you just say? The Chiefs offensive coordinator, or not offensive, defense. Spagnuolo. He is kind of that same way, right? Like he's maybe not a guy who would flourish as a head coach right now, but he's said like how happy he is to kind of be stable in his defensive position under Andy Reid, and like that he can only focus on the defense. Maybe Kyle Shanahan would actually do really well with a guy like Brandon Staley. Are you open to him working out at all? Just because we've had so many people in the comments talking about how poor of a job he did. I'm kind of against him because it's not like his offense was the problem with the Chargers. His defense did really poorly. So I don't love just from what we've seen, I don't love it. But at the same time, I don't know. He was successful under the Rams, so maybe there's something they could figure out there.
Yeah.
Would you
Brandon Staley, he's a tough one.
Would you be more disappointed or happy if it was between an internal hire? Because we've kind of established what would be exciting is a Belichick or a Vrabel. If it was Daniel Bullocks or Staley, which one would scare you more, or which one would you like more? I think the fans would not like Staley. He seems
I mean, I think a lot of fans have kind of shown the disdain for Staley. But I'm not so sure that an internal candidate would be a slam dunk either, just because the 49ers seem unsure about it, and I don't like that.
They weren't ready last year, and it's they don't seem
exactly.
enthusiastic this year. So it's
exactly.
What changed in a year?
So internal candidate, I'd be a little skeptical, hopeful, maybe the guy does end up, being a good defensive coordinator, but